Oh, seriously? Hey guys, welcome to another video with me, 6 Plus Stevo. And this video is going to be half a product review and half showing you my table setup, complete with terrain, that's been custom built by me. But first of all, let's have a look at what I want to show you is the game mat by Deepcut Studios. I'm trying to remember now what it's called. I believe it's called the Badlands. Don't quote me on that though, guys. This is a really unprofessional video, but I'm going to film this while it's set up anyway. So what we've got, as you can see, Deepcut Studio. That might bug some people. It's not a big issue. You can just stick a bit of terrain over the top and it will hide that. It's pretty small anyway. But I've got to say, this is an awesome looking game mat. For my orcs, I wanted a deserty, Mad Max style apocalypse looking wasteland. And this one was my favourite. You can see like the details of like the dry, parched, cracked earth. It looks really good. It looks so realistic. You've got sort of darker, burnt out areas. It's amazing, although it's flat, it really gives like a good 3D sort of look to the terrain, and it really does enhance the games. Games look so much cooler when they're played on good terrain and good mats. This is one of the mouse mat variants. And I just think these are one of the best thing that's happened for modern wargaming. Do you remember when we used to play on those sort of roll-out felt mats? Oh, those things were horrible. They always curled up at the edges, you know. Oh, yeah, I wasn't a fan of them. They were the best thing going at the time. Or the alternative was to make your own sort of hardboard ones with sand on. They look good, but they chip and it's noisy when rolling dice. Another advantage of these, when you roll the dice on these, makes a really soft sound. Handy when the missus is trying to get to sleep upstairs, or the kids, when you've got your mates around having a game. But yeah, I got this, I think it cost me, I think the usual price of this one, 6x4 mouse mat, is around the £60 mark. But I got mine on Black Friday, and on Black Friday it was about 15% off, I think, on Deepcut Studios. So I saved a bit of money on it. So I think I ended up, with the postage costs now, I think it cost me about 50, maybe £55. It was a little while ago. I've had it now, but it's great. It doesn't come with a case. Like it just comes in a box. I know some of the companies, I think it's Game Mat EU, they supply a carry case, a zip up case with all their mats for free, which is a nice touch. I didn't get that with mine, it just came in a box. But at work, excuse the mess in the house, but you see that cardboard tube there. I found that at work. They're about to throw it in the skip. I said, no, I'll have that. Because this rolls up nicely and just fits in that tube, and that keeps it safe and protected. But I think you can buy those tubes pretty cheap anyway. But yeah, just the detail on it is just awesome. I think it just looks incredible. So yeah, that was a bit of a spend out getting the mat. I really wanted a good gaming mat, and I thought that mouse mats was the way to go. But I needed some terrain to go on it. So options were to buy some of the pre-painted stuff that a lot of the mat companies sell as well, that directly ties in really nicely with the mats themselves. And there's some really good stuff out there, but it is pricey. Alternatively was the GW stuff, which I have had before, which is pretty good, but also a little bit pricey. So this time, for this mat and to make my desert terrain for my orcs, I thought I'd have a crack at making it myself, out of bits of MDF, polystyrene, and just see what I could do. do it at a fraction of the cost. And so if you just give me a moment to set it all up, I will show you what I've come up with and how my gaming terrain looks. So back in a sec. And this is the mat with all the homemade terrain put on it. As you can see, I've really gone for a desert wasteland theme here. Everything you see on this table is custom made, handmade by me. I tried to get the colours as close as possible to the mat. I basically went to the DIY store and got a load of the colour cards from the where they do the paint mixing, and choose a sort of base coat colour and a highlight colour that matched the mat as close as possible, and then got them to mix up the paint, just like standard emulsion paint for walls. And yeah, I think although they do stand out, they are a bit darker than the mat. I think it works quite well. It was never going to be perfect, but I just wanted to get that sort of desert wasteland theme there. But I'll talk you through a few of the pieces we've got here. Nearest ones here, we've got some craters. All this stuff is made out of, let's get another one here, actually one of the smaller pieces. It's all made from, the base is just MDF, 3mm MDF, I believe. You can buy sheets of that pretty cheap. You can use, I've seen people use cardboard and things before, and plywood, you know, anything really, but MDF I think gives the best results. It's solid, it's quite easy to work with. You can cut it out with a Stanley blade. I borrowed a jigsaw off a friend and sliced up random shapes, and then just sanded it down with coarse sandpaper to get the smooth sort of edges. All the rocks and things on these pieces are all just made out of polystyrene. Just polystyrene that I've got out of old packaging and stuff. Where I worked, they got a delivery of a lot of stuff in, and there was loads of polystyrene. I said, oh, I'm going to have that. Just sliced it up with a Stanley blade into rough shapes. But what I've actually done, I've gone one step further, because this is gaming terrain. I need to store it, I need to move it around all the time. Space is at a premium, so and just general gaming, you know, this is going to suffer a bit of wear and tear, so I wanted it to be hard wearing, so I've actually covered everything in polyfiller. So I cut all the random shapes out of polystyrene, stuck them all on. They're held together, these ones that sort of stack up are held together with cocktail sticks as well as PVA glue, and then I just painted over the whole thing, gave it 2 coats of polyfiller, and you can see it's solid, it's quite hard wearing. I didn't want something that was going to break off quite easily, as polystyrene is not, it's not a tough material and it's easy to break. It looks fine once you've done it, but I just wanted something to be hard wearing. And they're light because inside it's just polystyrene, but they're also hard, and they will take a few knocks. I mean, it's not really hard. If you squeeze really hard, you could break it with your hands. Also, using emulsion paint, it's sort of, because I've painted it on quite thick, it sort of leaves quite a bit of a sort of a crust of the paint, which also adds to the sturdiness and the hardiness of these. But yeah, I've got craters that I made. This is just sort of rough cut bits of polystyrene circled round, all based with sand that I got from the same hardware store. If you're going to be making terrain and stuff, do not ever use GW or one of the other model companies, like tiny little pots of sand that they'll overcharge you for. Go to the hardware store in the garden centre bits and buy yourself a big old bag of sand, and that's what I did. I sieved it through, so I've got different, in pots I've got different sort of textures of sand I can use. So you've got the fine sand, and then I've got bits of the larger pebbles and stuff like that. But yeah, it cost about £4 for a big old bag of it, and it's going to be more than enough. It's more than enough to make all these terrain pieces and to base my whole army. So money saving tip there for you. A lot of the companies that sell these mats also sell like pre-painted terrain, and I saw a set of terrain that was very similar to this in theme. I can't remember what the price was, but let's just say it wasn't cheap, and I didn't have that sort of money, and I wanted to create my own stuff. And basically, other than the cost of the paints and the glue, etc., the MDF, the polystyrene was all free. So I did it at a fraction of the cost that this sort of amount of terrain would cost me to buy. You just got to be prepared. If you are going to be making your own terrain, it is a lot of work. It does make a lot of mess. Slicing up polystyrene, you do get covered in the stuff. So you've got to have a hoover nearby to clean up afterwards. And it does take quite a while. I'm not going to lie to you guys. By the time I was painting up the last batch of these, I was so bored of making these. But I like the results, so that kept me going, and I am pleased with the results. So yeah, I've got one crater there. The bits in the middle are just bits of old slate. Again, another money saving tip for you. I bought roofing slate, and then you just get a big old sheet of roofing slate. You can get them on eBay for about 99p. Got that home, wrapped a towel around it and smashed it up with a hammer. It left me loads of little bits of slate. So I popped them in the middle to give the sort of where the explosions happened, to make the crater. It sort of cracked all the earth and everything, and I think it gives quite a cool effect. And these obviously provide a cover save for units inside them. You can fit a sort of 5-man tactical squad inside one of them, easy enough. And then I've got this sort of the stacked towers of rocks. I really like these. They remind me of sort of like, I've googled pictures of deserts and stuff, things like Nevada and places, and picture where you see these sort of unusual rock formations and stuff, and I just quite like the look of that. It just makes a nice bit of scattered terrain. Again, really easy to make. It just takes a bit of time, really. If you don't want to go the route of, you know, covering it in polyfiller and stuff, you can get that same looking result without doing that, but just be aware that it won't be as hardy. You can hear the sound of sort of how hard that is, but like I say, they're light, but they are got a bit of weight at the bottom of the MDF, so they're sturdy. Another piece here, another piece there. I've also made as well little bits of cover terrain. Barriers. I was intending just to buy some, but then I thought, actually, with my offcuts and stuff, I'd already built the sort of larger pieces, but I thought with the offcuts I can just cut out a small piece of MDF, and again, this is just polystyrene cut up into rocks, so I could make some natural cover, and they make really cool little you know, barrier bunker type things to give you cover saves. I've got another one over here right at the edge. This is one I'm quite pleased with. This is the only one that's not totally finished yet, as you can see. I've got to paint the actual thing, but this was made using, that's the spare faceplate left over from the Gorkanaut, a leftover tyre from a truck, and I think the wall section is a leftover bit from the battle wagon kit, and it's just built up with sand around the base. So once that's painted up in orky colours and rust and things going on there, I think that's going to look quite effective as a nice bit of orky terrain. I do plan to get some orc buildings and stuff on here. I've seen some of the MDF kits that some of the companies sell. I can't remember the name of the company now, but they sell some amazing orc terrain MDF kits, bunkers and watchtowers and stuff. That my eventual plan is to have a couple of those, because I really want this to be sort of an orc outpost out in the desert, to have some buildings and stuff around. But to start with, I've just sort of stuck to the natural bit just to get the terrain itself done. Another piece here. Whenever you do make terrain like this as well, try and be a bit more random in your shapes. Don't just do exact circles and stuff. You want things to look as natural and random as possible. These are good fun to make actually, because you don't really have to have a plan in mind. Sometimes you start with a plan, but you just carve away and shapes just sort of happen naturally as you go along, and you end up creating some quite cool things. That another plan I've got from doing these actually is seeing how some of these have come out. I quite like the idea, I haven't attempted it yet, but of making a sort of almost like a totem pole, or like a carving, sort of like a Gork and Mork type monument almost, sort of carve the faces of like orc glyph faces into the rocks or something. I think something like that could work quite cool, especially if you've got them sort of almost bookend style, one either side, like a gateway entrance into the orc Badlands. I think would look quite cool. So that's something I might attempt in the future. This is probably my favourite piece. This is great if you've got like jump packers and stuff or anything. They can, there's enough space on there to fit a good sort of 8-man squad, at least, maybe even a 10-man squad up there. But yeah, that's quite a cool piece. And I've also got the corner terrain piece here. I've got, do excuse me, it's a bit hard to get around my living room once the table's set up. It takes up the whole room. This piece was made with sort of inch thick sheets of polystyrene, and I just stepped them up, getting smaller and smaller. They were already cut in a nice square shape, so I've just sort of cut the corners and then lined them up and glued them up, so it's perfectly flat on the corners, so it makes a nice corner piece of terrain, and a nice stepped hill there, great for snipers and things. I kind of wish now actually that when I'd done it I'd made another one, so I could either have one in each corner or put them together and make a sort of a central hill type thing. But like I said, I am limited on space, and this stuff does take up a bit of room, but as you can see, it quite comfortably fills a 6x4 table with enough terrain. And I'm really pleased actually, I'm really pleased. Playing the game years ago, I had fully painted armies, but I never had terrain I was happy with. Terrain was always put on the back burner as an afterthought, so getting back into the hobby over the last year or so, I've done it in the exact opposite. I've now got a completely unpainted army. I know, heresy. But I just really wanted to get the terrain done first. But now I've done that, I now have a 3,000 point orc army, which I will show on the channel soon, in its unpainted state. And I'm going to make a series of videos as I complete each unit and get the army painted. But I think having terrain like this is going to really spur me on now. It's really going to give me the incentive to get the army looking as good as this terrain. And I'm really pleased with it actually. I've never really attempted anything like this before. I've watched a lot of videos on YouTube, tips on how to do it. If you'd like me to do a sort of step-by-step video on how to make these, please comment below. I've never done anything like that before. And I am, if I'm honest, a bit burnt out of making these now. But if there was enough demand for it and people were wanting to see it and wanted to know how to do it, maybe I could make one smaller piece and just run you through the steps of how I did it and everything I used and what you needed. Paint wise, it's just a dark base coat colour of brown, really dark brown, like a chocolate brown emulsion. Slap that over the whole thing, and then like a lighter sort of sandy brown to sort of match this, dry brushed over. And then with the army painter range, I dry brushed even lighter over a sort of I think it's called fur brown, but it's got like a red tinge to it, and sort of lightly dry brushed that over. And then the final highlight on all the edges is the I can't remember the exact colour, but it's like a bone colour, like a slightly off-white colour, like a skeleton bone. And just dry brush that along all the sharp edges. And now while you're doing these, as I was making them and as I was painting them, I was thinking, oh, they don't look right, they don't look real enough, and they just look a bit crap. But once I put that edge highlight on, just pop, the whole thing just came to life, and suddenly it just gives it a realistic sort of rocky look. And painting terrain's quite good fun actually, because with painting models you've always got to be so delicate and so, you know, you're painting tiny little details. With this it's a lot of dry brushing, it's a lot of slapping on base coat, a lot of dry brushing, and even the edge bit, you don't have to be neat with it. It's terrain, you can be a bit messy with it, especially when it's natural stuff like this. In some ways almost the messier you are, the better. But yeah, I think it's come off really effective actually. I'm really happy with it. Hopefully the camera's doing it justice. But yeah, there you go. Anyway guys, that is my Orky desert terrain, and hopefully in the future, once my army is starting to get some paint on it, you'll start to see some battle reports on the channel. I'm not going to film any battle reports until I've got at least a small portion of the army fully painted, because I don't think battle reports with unpainted armies are going to get much views, and certainly won't get much likes. But maybe if I set myself sort of at least 500 points worth to start with, just so I can get some battle reports going. But yeah, there you go guys. Anyway, thanks again for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Leave your thoughts below, and remember, if you would like me to make a video doing like a step-by-step how-to guide, how to make this desert terrain for yourself, then please leave comments below, and if I get enough demand for it, then I will happily make one more of these and film myself making it and do a step-by-step. But thank you guys anyway. 6+ Stevo signing out.